turn the clock back, but we desperately wanted to try and put it right. And the way in which we could do that was, of course, by finding the real killer.
Aware of how badly let down by the police Leslie's family felt, one of McLean's first priorities was to go and meet them and attempt to win back their trust.
I can remember realising the importance of the first impressions we gave to April and other members of Leslie's family.
I told Mr. McLean that I didn't think I would ever see the killer of Leslie in my lifetime. And he said, yes, you will.
I remember introducing Sergeant Hepworth, Veronica Hepworth, as the family liaison officer.
That was a very, very interesting meeting, to say the least. April, first words to me was, well, you've got your work cut out, girl.
So we knew that the reputation of West Yorkshire Police wasn't at its highest with Leslie's family.
Lacking any new lines of inquiry, McLean was determined to leave no stone unturned.
I went up to Wetherby Laboratory and I spoke to scientists up there about the potential for reviewing the forensic evidence in the case. And we established that there was only one thing remaining in all the exhibits, in all the case, and that was an envelope, and that envelope contained some sellotape tapings.
At the time of the original examination, the surface of Leslie Molseed's clothing would have been taped, so they would have got strips of sellotape and pressed them down onto the garments and lifted them off to collect any fibres that might have transferred to them.
The discovery was fortunate, and it had the potential to be hugely significant.
We knew at that time semen had been found on Leslie Molseed's pants, so there were some thoughts around, is there a possibility that some of the semen could have also lifted off onto the sellotape? And
it was put to me that it might be possible to extract that semen and obtain a DNA profile.
But it was by no means a certainty. This was uncharted territory for the Forensic Science Service. A DNA profile had never been obtained in this way before, so scientists experimented with dummy strips of sellotape. Once confident of their method, they went to work on the originals. They only had one chance to do it right, as the process would destroy the tape. Their first success came with the discovery of sperm heads in the material they'd extracted from the tape. Then came the result police and forensic scientists had hoped for: a DNA profile of the killer of Leslie Molseed.
This was such a big breakthrough. This was a case that at that time was 25 years old. It was the oldest case that we'd ever worked on, and it was the first time this type of technology had been applied to that type of retained material, so it really was very, very exciting.
Police began collating DNA samples, keeping the existence of this crucial new piece of information secret so as not to alert the killer. But as the months and then years passed and no match was found, the family's hopes began to fade.
I thought, we are never going to find out who it is. Why is he not in the database? Has he thought, oh, cocky, got away with killing our Lel?
If you're over the age of about 30, the name Leslie Molseed may be familiar to you. Her face became a poignant symbol of child murder.
In February 2003, Max McLean used a television appeal to publicly announce the existence of the DNA profile for the first time.
All we need is a name. After 28 years, we will never have a better chance of catching the killer of Leslie Molseed.
That was hugely successful in terms of public response, but of course it didn't give us the name of Ronald Charles Edward Castree.
Since 1990, Castree had been running a comic book shop in Ashton-under-Lyne. At the time, his chosen business raised no suspicions, but his motives have now been cast in a new light.
We wonder whether that particular type of occupation does give him access to children and to the world of fantasy.
It was his cover. He was a well-known businessman, respected, but then he had a dark secret.
After Leslie's murder, you see that he lived a very unhappy, deviant and dark life. And I think that tells a lot about the man.
throughout the years he was very jumpy, and we could never fathom out why in the middle of the night he would leap out of bed and, "Bev, there's someone in the garden."
He was always paranoid, he was always on edge.
I believe that in his mind, on all these occasions when he thought the front door was going in his dreams, or he thought there was someone in the garden, he thought they were coming for him. And then when we had horrendous arguments over things, I'd say, "What is the matter with you?" And he'd go, "If only you knew, Bev." I never suspected. And I'd say, "If only I knew what?" And he'd go, "Leave it, Bev, leave it. You're like a dog with a bone. Just leave it."
Castrie's 26-year marriage to Beverly finally ended in 1997. By then, he had evaded justice for 22 years, and he must have believed the police would never catch up with him. But as he began his new life, his dark sexual secrets and his use of prostitutes were to prove his undoing. "30 years after the murder of Leslie Molseed, West Yorkshire police had a DNA profile of her killer, but no match. Then, on October the 1st, 2005, Ronald Castrie was accused of rape by a prostitute and later arrested. Although the police didn't charge him, new laws allowed them to take a routine DNA swab. And this was the moment when Castrie's lifetime of lies finally unravelled. When the Forensic Science Service next ran the DNA profile of Leslie's killer through the database, they discovered they had a perfect match.
I got a phone call from Kathy Turner at the lab, who asked me if I was sitting down, and at first what she told me didn't sink in. And she said the name of Ronald Castrie, and it didn't mean at that time anything to me.
I was very quickly briefed on a couple of very important factors about Ronald Castrie. He lived locally, only 3/4 of a mile away from where Leslie was probably abducted. He had a conviction for a sexual offence that was quite similar in its method used to the abduction and killing of Leslie, and that he was a taxi driver and therefore had access to vehicles. So there was 3 very important factors that were immediately brought to my attention and of course were of great interest to us. The DNA match really was just the start of the research work that we had to then undertake and prove that Leslie Molseed had been killed by Ronald Castrie.
By November the 5th, 2006, the police were convinced that at long last they had the right man. They were ready to make their arrest.
Are you Ronald Charles Edward Castrie?
I am.
Right, listen very carefully to what I've got to say to you now. You were under arrest for the murder of Leslie Susan Molseed.
You're joking.
Between 12 noon on Sunday, the 5th of October 1975 and 06:45 a.m. on Wednesday the 8th of October 1975. Do you understand the caution?
Yes, I understand the caution.
Your arrest is necessary for the prompt and effective investigation of the offence.
It's ridiculous.
That same morning, Leslie's family were told the news they'd waited more than 30 years to hear.
Oh my God, don't know what to say to you. It was just, my God, I can't believe it. Are you sure? Are you 100% sure this is the man?
I was over the moon. I really was.
Gobsmacked, I think, is a term I would use. I don't think April ever thought that she would see a positive match to the DNA profile in her lifetime.
But there was another family for whom news of the arrest was a devastating blow.
When they said that, "We've got your dad on suspicion of murder," my world just fell apart.
I said, "Are you sure?" And they went, "As sure as we'll ever be." And then I felt incredibly angry with him, you know. I thought, oh, all them years, you know, and I've lived with you and covered it up. We've been a cover-up, all of us.
Did you kill Leslie Susan Molseed?
I did not.
Do you know anything about the murder?
No. only